Good afternoon and welcome to today's Otus Live webinar, Otus in 30 minutes or less, where we're going to go through a very high-level overview of the Otus platform so that you can kind of see all of the things that it does and maybe even at the same time multitask, get some other things done in the background. But it's great to be with you. Very brief introduction. My name is Keith Westman. I'm the COO here at Otus. I'll be walking through the platform, and along with me will be some experiences. Spent many years of my life on your side of this webinar. Third grade teacher for a number of years, a principal of a middle school, director of technology. I live in the Chicago area, which is where I spent my career. But I'll try to bring some of those experiences in as we go through the platform. Obviously, it being the year 2023, we're all used to the webinar format. So although you can hear me, I can't hear you. If someone walks into your office or your phone rings, feel free to get that and know that you're not going to disrupt anything on my end. Of course, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A tool that you can use to ask any questions. After the webinar, I'll share a recording of this session with everyone. And of course, you'll have my contact information if you would like to get additional questions answered that maybe weren't answered during today's session. So all of that being said, we'll get into it. I like to think about Otus as being this resource for you to answer some really important questions that you have about how students are doing in your school or in your school district. Now, that could mean many things to many people. So let me share with you what it means to me. We know that we have all sorts of data on our students, and that data comes from a lot of different places. Well, oftentimes we have a lot of data, but we may not have as much information or insights, and that's what we're trying to do here at Otus. So let's think about all of the different places where we commonly have data or sources of data or information about student performance. One of them is through common assessments. Now, either these are common assessments that are given across an entire district or state, or they are common assessments that are given maybe by a single teacher across different classes or at a grade level in a building. The idea of a common or formative assessment, it's gathering all sorts of very helpful, timely information about student progress. Otus can be a platform to deliver those to students so that you have access to what's happening, what are the results based on those assessments right within the platform. But we also know that other types of data is important to understand. Well, through the use of assessments in Otus, we can also identify what standards are being assigned or assessed through those assessments. So we can have Otus be this place that houses standards-based data on how students are performing, or any sort of traditional, there's like a points or numbers-based grading system. Otus can accommodate each of those or a hybrid of each of them. We also we have data from a bunch of other sources. Maybe it's a state test. Maybe it's something like iReady or NWEA or the Access test. You have all of these different student assessments that either you give at a district level or maybe are mandated by the state, and you have data on those on students. And we want that to inform the story of a student within Otus. So as you see, we're starting to build this out where we have real-time formative, summative assessment data that's coming from classrooms, alongside data from those external places where we're reporting this out to students and teachers and administrators and families in a meaningful way. And the final way that we like to think about data is, what are we going to do now? So now that we know this about this group of students, what types of interventions do we need to put in place? And then how are we going to know that that's working? So think about Otus as this one place that's going to help you answer questions using data but it's also going to gather some of that data for you to provide this holistic view of student growth. I'm going to get into the platform in just a moment, but let's talk, let's zero in on this whole idea of assessments first. When assessments are taken by students within Otus, those assessments can be created by a teacher or by an administrator or by some other regional or state agency. You're going to write these assessment items and you're going to say that our kids are taking them. So just coming from your own brain or brainstorming. But we also have the ability to provide students with assessments that are pre-built. Some of the ones that go along with various curricular programs are shown on my screen. So you can create your own. We have pre-built assessments that go along with various curricula. We also have our own, what we call proficiency assessments. Currently, these are for grades K through 8. For those K through 2 students, they're 5-item assessments aligned to standards. They're in English, reading, and math. For those older students, at least grades 3 through 8, they're 10-item assessments. But these allow, again, teachers to use assessments, use Otus for giving students assessments. And they don't have to create anything. Just great for periodic formative quick checks each week or however you wish to use them. Another way that assessments can be created is through creating assessments using items from the Mastery Item Bank. So this is a database of, over 100,000 items, grades K through 12, ELA, math, science, social studies, aligned to standards. Again, you're creating your own assessments, but you're using items from a item bank. And before we log into the system, there's various tools that Otus has integrated with. So if you recognize any of these logos, there's some that you definitely do, but Respondus is a lockdown browser. Text Help allows you to provide some accommodations, maybe a screen reader, highlighting text, certain things during assessments that are available within Otus. So all that being said, let's jump into the platform. Okay. Back up. This is Otus. This is what the login screen of Otus looks like. Otus is something that students use, teachers use, administrators use, families use. And the way that accounts are created is typically through an integration with a student information system. We work with all of them. We also have the ability for students or all of your users to log in using a Google integration. So you can log in using Google and still have an integration with your SIS. But we're going to log in first as a teacher. So let's log in as a teacher, and we're going to see what this is all about. So I'm going to log in using my teacher account and just getting a lay of the land, and I'll keep it super simple. Things you can click on the left. Activity I can read about what's happening in my class in the middle of the screen. And a to-do list on the right. Otus does a lot. What we're trying to do is be this hub where all of the data that we want to know about how our students doing is contained in one spot. So we need to not only house data, but we need to gather data. So that's a lot of what you're seeing in these tools. The reason I'm saying that is if there's something that is duplicative of a tool you already use, you don't have to use everything I'm sharing within Otus. I'm just showing you what it can do. But let's start first with these assessments. So I'm going to click over on this assessments area. Let me show you a couple examples of what the assessments can look like when you create them in Otus. The first example that I'm going to share with you is something that we call a simple assessment. The reason it is called a simple assessment is because it is very easy for any user, regardless of their their comfort level with education, with technology, to create. True, false, short answer, multiple choice. That's it. Very easy for someone to create. They're great for exit tickets or formative quick checks that a teacher may want to provide to students. Let me show you what it's like to build one of those. Again, it's not that hard at all. If you've ever created or built a Google like a quiz on a Google form, it's very simple. So I'm just choosing, what kind of question is it, writing my question out, giving my answer choices. Now, this is where it gets kind of cool. One of the things that Google's not amazing at is identifying what standard an item is assessing. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that in Otus. So Otus will come preloaded with all of the standards that are used in your state. If you have custom standards, those can be loaded in as well. But just for the sake of it, what it is, I'm in Illinois, we use Common Core, but let me just show you how that would work. So if I want to align a standard to this item, I don't have to remember what is CC, CCSS 3.LR, all these crazy codes for standards. As a teacher, what I can say is I'm teaching nonfiction. That's what I know. And Otus will narrow down, hey, here are the standards that you're probably looking to teach. And that's where I would just link the standard to the item. Okay, so that is a simple assessment. It's simple because it's easy to create true, false, short answer, multiple choice. But that's not an amazing option if I'm a math teacher, or if I'm an ELA teacher, or if I'm a science teacher watching a science lab. Multiple choice, true, false, short answer is fine for certain things. It's not amazing for everything. So that leads me to our second type of assessment that Otus offers, and this is called an advanced assessment. This is what an advanced assessment would look like if I were a student taking an assessment. An advanced assessment offers over 65 different types of items. Drag and drop, matching, the Desmos items, manipulatives. You may be thinking to yourself, wow, this looks a lot like our state assessment. It's because it does. We use the same engine that a lot of state assessments use. And so the idea is that students they're comfortable with the format by the time it comes to take that assessment, because they've been using these tools throughout the year. So again, why is it called advanced assessment? Tons of options for questions that can be asked. And with that, it takes a little longer to create them. Okay, final type of assessments that I want to share with you. It's actually my favorite. It's called a rubric-based assessment, because I'm still pretty sure we haven't scratched the itch for an ELA teacher and how they assess students. So I'll show you an example here. So in this case, we're going to use a rubric. And this rubric is going to sit next to a Google Doc. So I, as a teacher, created a rubric. I aligned it to standards. And again, this is really super simple, the creating of these rubrics, which I won't go into here, and I'm saying, all right, I want Otus to make a unique copy of this Google Doc, just like we do with Google Classroom, because when the student submits it, I want to have the Google Doc next to this rubric. So I'm going to minimize the rubric. I can leave feedback for the students just like I normally do on Google Docs. And when it comes time to grade it, I can just do that right from here. It doesn't have to be just Google Docs. Anything can be uploaded or added by students. Again, it's a way to very efficiently assess performance type tasks. So what, Keith? All right, so we give the kids the assessments. So now what? A couple different ways we can look at the results. I'm going to head over to this grade book in Otus. And again, I'm still logged in as a teacher. I shared with you that we can accommodate standards-based grading, traditional points-based grading, or a hybrid. This is an example of a hybrid-based grade book. Why do we do a hybrid based grade book? I don't know, it's really for like people like my dad. My dad is old school. German fella from the north side of Chicago, he would not understand standards-based grading. He would understand points-based grading. And sometimes that's where your communities are in their journey, where you want to kind of walk people to standards-based grading. So in this case, we're just saying, hey, here's how this student has done on all the assessments that they've turned in. However, this is what I think is super cool. This is the standards-based view of the grade book. So what we are looking at is, as a teacher, these are all of the students in my ELA class. This all comes from your student information system. So every night it's going to sync. It's going to put the right kids in the right class with the right teacher. Again, we work with all student information systems. We work in a really interesting way with PowerSchool, Skyward, Infinite Campus, Aries, in that we can pass points-based grades from Otus to those student information systems seamlessly. But let's get back to the standards-based gradebook. So what is this showing me? So in my demo system, my grading scale is meets, exceeds, approaching, not at standard. You can use whatever scale you want. If it's 1, 2, 3, 4, if it's awesome, not so awesome, what's going on, whatever you want. But what this is showing me is Frank on this standard is currently meeting. And that number 10 is telling me that we've assessed him on this standard 10 times. If I click on it, it's going to show me all of the different times that Frank has been assessed on this standard. And one of the things that I like the best is that this view is available to everyone. So your families, your students, administrators, teachers, all get to see not the view of the entire class, but their own, the view specific to the students. Now, teachers and administrators get to see the entire class. So very easy for me to see, okay, just at a glance right here, it looks like we have more students who are approaching this standard than any other standard. We have different ways to calculate overall performance. You get it. Another way we can look at the results, and again, just as a teacher, I can look at the results of this assessment. I'm going to hold off on showing you what we're looking at in this screen. I'm going to click on assessments over here. If I want to do a deeper dive into a specific assessment that I gave as a classroom teacher, I can say, okay, I gave this common assessment. Here's how my students did. I can look by student and by item. If I want to see how my students did, I can also look at the standards that have been assessed on that assessment. One really cool thing, let me find this assessment called Busy Bees, is let's say you are using a typical points-based scale. There we go. So in this case, what a teacher is able to do is say, okay, I gave this assessment to my students. I want to see like the performance breakdown, but then I could start looking at some other interesting things. Since Otus connects to your student information system, we can pull in some of the ways that students are grouped in the student information system. So maybe you have your gifted, talented students, your student athletes, your fine arts kids. Now, you can also group kids in Otus away from your student information system, but what this is allowing you to do is after you give an assessment, have some pretty powerful PLCs where it's like, hey, look, it looks like our ELL students are outperforming our student athletes on this assessment. Why is that? We can also look by gender, by race, ethnicity. So we can do some deeper dives into our assessments. And again, same thing, you can do the item analysis. Let's take a look at the items that students are missing and why, and also how did they do on the standards that were assessed. All right, we're going to log in as an administrator in just a moment, but the final thing I wanted to share with you is, remember, Otus can also be that place where all of that external data that you have on your students can reside. So these are just some of the logos. This is a demo system. So I have tons of different examples of data. In my demo system, you wouldn't have nearly as many. But what this is allowing your teachers to do is not to have to log into another system to see, hey, how are my kids doing on iReady Reading? They can see that data right within Otus. They can see how their students scored for as long as they've been taking that assessment in your district. Even though I'm just their new teacher this year, I can see how my class has done over the years. So all sorts of different ways that you can have access to that data. Okay, final thing I'll share with you before we head over as an administrator. Otus will organize all of this information for an individual student as well. So this is frank. Every student will get a student profile. That student profile is going to have their grade book, whether it's a points or standards-based grade book or both. If any of these assessments the kids are proud of, they can add them to a portfolio. If I'm doing some problem solving with Frank, I can have access to all of the data for Frank for as long as he's been with us, right within Otus. So a lot of tools to help me just organize all the information that we need for Frank. So let's log in as an administrator. As an administrator, I just want to showcase a couple things. So now you got all of this stuff happening in your classrooms. What you want to be able to do is, all right, now what's happening? Like what's in it for me? An administrator has all of the same tools that a teacher has, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something that administrators have that are unique. Head over to this reports area. So there's two reports I want to share with you. The first one is called a query report. A query report allows you to say, I need a list of kids, and I want that list of kids to be anyone who's either in my building or in my district who on the state assessment, they scored above this. On NWEA reading, they scored below that. You're mixing and matching all of this different data. You have this set of criteria and you're saying, show me the kids who meet that criteria. So if you're putting together intervention eligibility lists, gifted eligibility lists, who are just kids who we want to have our eyes on, this is a great way to identify students. So let me show you what that looks like. Before I show you the results, one of the nice things about Otus is creating these reports does not require you to have a computer science degree. You're just adding the criteria. All right, so on this assessment, I want kids in ELA who scored greater than, less than. It's very simple. But if we go back to the results, when we go to run that report, what Otus is going to do is it's going to say, not only give you a list of kids, but it's going to say, here's something you need to know about them. Here are the buildings where they go, the kids that meet this criteria. Here's their grade levels. Here's some demographic information about these students. Here are those student groups. Interesting. If we put in that criteria, we see a lot of these students are ELL students, more than who are fine arts kids. We also have the concept of teacher groups. So you can organize your teachers into groups and then analyze the data of their students. So I can say, our first year teachers have more students who meet this criteria than our teachers who are alumni of our school district. So when you're thinking about your institute days, you can make sure that you're going to provide a different workshops for your first year teachers than for your activity sponsors, because they don't have as many of the students who meet this criteria. So that's a query. It's great for identifying students. And the other one I want to share with you is called a historical report. And this is where you can create cohorts of students. In this case, I'm looking at my IEP students, student athletes, multi-ethnic students, students of math, of teachers who are piloting our new math series, and then all kids who are at South Maple Elementary. And I want to see, how do those groups compare to one another on our state test, on the Renaissance, Star Math, on that CKLA grade 3 beginning of year assessment that we had them take, on ACT. So it's allowing you to create cohorts of kids and compare their performance. So you have a school board meeting and someone stands up and says, you know what? Our students who are new to the district this year are outperforming students who have been here since kindergarten. What say you? Well, it's very easy for you to just say, all right, I'm going to take a group of kids who it's their first year here, and we're going to compare them to students who've been here since kindergarten. How are they doing on all of these different measures? All right, I'm going to take a big deep breath. I want you to, if you have any questions, type them in. I'm going to take a breath, a sip of water. We have a couple of questions coming in, and I will get at those in just one moment. All right, it's a great question. If you currently have a third-party platform to assess students on an SEL inventory, can that data be brought over as a trend over time report? The answer is yes. So here's what to know about external data. We call it third-party data because it's just like a catch-all. Sometimes that data that you're gathering in some third-party system is something like the ACT. Other times it's behavior data from like Swiss or something like that. Any data that can be associated with an individual student can be brought into Otus. And then because Otus is going to it's going to organize this data forever, and it's going to stay associated with that student. Now you can use Otus to view trends and compare that data to other types of data. This is a good question. Is there any way in Otus to track data across school years? Okay, so as I shared, an unlimited number of years of historical data can be loaded into Otus. That sometimes gives folks a panic attack, like, oh my gosh, we have like 20 years of data. I have no time to get this into Otus. Have no fear. The vast majority of folks at Otus have worked not in your shoes, but in your roles. You don't have time to be uploading data into a new system. Part of the service of Otus is we provide access to our data team. Our data team are the ones who will actually get data into Otus for you. All you need to do is share with us through a secure way the raw data, and then we will get it in and updated into Otus for you. We also have direct connections with lots of different assessments, such as iReady, NWEA, Renaissance, that make it more seamless, but we try to take that lift off of you. One other part of Otus that I want to share with you. Now, stepping back, you don't roll all of everything I'm sharing with you out at the same time in your district. That would cause serious anxiety. You identify what part of Otus is the itch that needs to be scratched right now, and you start there and you slowly roll it out. Straight up, this time of year, anything that involves teachers or students using Otus, this is not an amazing time to do it. Your teacher's already buried. This is the time of year, if you're looking to organize your external data into one spot for your administrators, this is usually when that happens. You're not having to involve teachers or students yet. So all that to say, sometimes you have like a behavior plan or an intervention plan or a profile of a graduate, something that goes across school years. Like at the end of third grade, you don't want it to go away. So Otus has a way to track that type of data as well. And this could be like where I'm a teacher, I'm a third grade teacher, and I have a new group of students. I want to see, I know that Frank is in this reading improvement plan. Well, show me, he's been in that plan for a couple of years. I just want to see where he is. And so I can go back and see all of the updates that have been made to this plan across the year. So just saying, a way for student progress on different plans to be tracked over time across school years. Okay, it's 2:29 my time. My time is yours. I'm not going to go anywhere until everyone signs off. But before everyone signs off, I want to say thank you for being here. If you do need to sign off at 2:30, you're going to get a copy of this recording. I'll email that to you in just a little bit. Thank you for being here. It's always an honor when folks take time out of their day to learn about Otus. I'm going to take another sip of water. If you have questions, keep them flowing. If you do have to sign off now, thank you for your time. I don't want to overstay my welcome. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your week. Hope you're off to a great school year. I'm going to stick on. If you have any questions, I'm around. I'll take another sip of water and another breath. All right, with that, it looks like our questions have wrapped up. Thanks for being here. Expect to hear from me later today. Have a wonderful start to your school year, and thanks so much for joining.